Well, finally, we are going to talk about the expired letter. I know, my chicken scratch. You'll have to forgive me. Guys, there's a lot more that goes into prospecting on an expired than one might think. And one of the reasons for that is because expired listings are actually a pretty crowded space. There's also some controversy about whether or not we should be targeting expireds at all. But for those of you who do, for those of you who have this as part of your business plan, for those of you who are going after these, but maybe you haven't done the letter strategy, or maybe you haven't done it because you didn't know it existed, or you just don't believe in it, or maybe you haven't done it because everyone told you that cold calling was the way. But I'm here to tell you that everybody is cold calling. And I want to talk a little bit about the why behind this, how we can reach more people with this strategy than the traditional expired prospecting methods, and we're kind of going to go through all that. So first and foremost, you guys, when you are prospecting on an expired, check the MLS. Check the MLS. Make sure it is not listed. Now, is it the end of the world if you end up sending something out to an expired that's on the MLS? No, it's not. I mean, you just say, oh gosh, sorry, that must have happened like after I had already stamped the envelope. But I gotta tell you something. Nothing is a bigger pet peeve of mine than agents or sales professionals in general that just don't do their research. You have access to a tool that allows you to determine whether or not something has been relisted, and you should be following up on that. In fact, a lot of listings expire and then are relisted the very next day so that they can get their days on market to reset, or whatever it is, right? And oftentimes it's relisted with the same agent. Nothing makes an agent look more foolish than one that is ill prepared, especially when the information is available and right in front of you. What happens with a lot of folks that are cold calling specifically on expired listings is they go and they pull the database and they think to themselves, well, I'm not worried about the dead loss for those that are already relisted. They're just not going to call me, or they're just not going to answer, or they're just going to tell me they already relisted. It's not worth my time to scrub the data. Well, let me tell you, I think it's worth the time to scrub the data because one, it makes you look better prepared. Two, there's no reason for you to be prospecting on somebody that's really not available, especially when you know they're not available. And three, it takes like a few minutes to take all the addresses that you have, plug them into the MLS. You can actually batch them. I know every MLS is different, but I use the MLS for research. I'm not pulling all of my expireds necessarily off of the MLS because we're supposed to be using it as a tool and a resource, right? It's not necessarily there for us to get our leads. In fact, it's not there for us to get our leads. It's there for us to do research, to value properties, to check up on, listing statuses and things of that nature. But one of the things you can do, at least in California, at least with the MLS that I'm a part of, and I'm sure many of you have something similar, is you can actually plug the parcel numbers in. Out here they call it an assessor parcel number, but you can actually plug the parcel number in and in the MLS, and you can batch that and see how many of them are still off market or not relisted. And what's nice about that is you can just tick off the percentage of your list that has already come back to market, and then not waste your time, money, and resources targeting them. So check the MLS first for properties to make sure that they are not already listed, or relisted, I should say. Because again, I can't overemphasize this, you guys. There's no reason for you to not be prepared. We have access to so much data and so much information, and not having some of the basics, to be honest, it just makes you look stupid. So don't be that agent. The second thing is this. This method works for listings 60 to 90 days back. Okay, tops. Okay, so 60 to 90 days back tops. Okay, we don't want to go further back than that for this expired technique or for this expired campaign. You're welcome to try if you'd like, but the best results that I get are for listings that have expired within the last 60 to 90 days and have not relisted, obviously. Now, I do have another expired letter, totally different campaign. For old expireds, it is a different approach. Nothing wrong with that approach, but it is not this one. And so I want to just make sure there's a clear distinction between the two. Eventually, what you're going to get to is like you're going to start off, when you start doing these expireds, you're going to go back to everything that expired in the last, let's say in the last 60 days or the last 90 days. And then what you'll start doing is making it part of your daily routine, where you just pull the list of expireds for that day, whatever resource you use for that, and then you'll just cross-reference the MLS, check and make sure they haven't relisted overnight, and then boom, pop that letter out. So instead, like, you might start out sending 100 or 200 or 500 of these, and if you start doing this on like a daily routine, like first thing you do in the morning is send out your expireds that happened overnight, or maybe you batch them every few days or at the end of the week, then you'll get to a point where you're just sending out 10, 20, 30 at a time at the most, right? Now, you're not going to get calls on every single one that you send out. Keep in mind that you may have to send 10 different mailers out if you're sending them like 5 or 10 at a time before you even potentially get a call. But I average across the board, I think I've said this a million times before, but I average one inbound call across all my mailers for every 164 pieces I send out. Some of them land better than others. Some geographies and demographics work better than others. It just all depends. I have some agents across the country that are getting one call for every 10 letters they send out, and I have others that get one call for every 500, but nothing has disproven that there is a positive return on investment for these direct mail campaigns. But for this particular expired, important that you're going back no more than about 60 to 90 days, again, at your own risk. But the way that the letter is worded, as you probably have already seen, the way that the letter is worded shows and implies that it's something that is recently expired, and so you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye on that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about timing. I want to talk a little bit about the timing of letters. Well, we're talking about days. Timing of letters versus, let's do versus in a different number, versus calling. Okay, hey guys, this is something that drives me absolutely crazy, is this myth, this idea that the timing of a call is more efficient than a letter. First and foremost, for those of you that do cold call, I can debunk this in about 4 seconds, because at the end of the day, the mail can get delivered the next day. In fact, mail can get delivered the same day, but more often than not, it gets delivered the next day, especially if it's local. It's not like we're sending out expired letters on the other side of the country, right? So what a lot of people tend to think, and the reason a lot of people shy away from mail, is because they think the timing of a letter just isn't as efficient as picking up the phone and calling. And I can't tell you how many people I've had tell me, they say, hey James, I think it's great that you send letters, but I kind of laugh in your face because I can ultimately reach that expired like way before you can. By the time you get there, I've already hit them up like 15 times and I've already called through like the entire list. So we'll talk about the power of the letters in just a few minutes, and why they can't reach everybody I can reach anyway. Excuse me for a moment. There we go. Try to fix that up a little bit. I apologize. It's getting a little botchy there. Okay, so it's important to understand that the timing of a letter, it can land just as quickly as you could a phone call, and it can land in mass. So instead of hoping that somebody can, they dedicate a few hours to cold calling one day and they hope to get through and churn and burn all the numbers and then ultimately get a hold of all those people, the reality is we can land all of these letters to all of the mailboxes of the addresses that they belong to, and we don't have to worry about is the phone number right and all that other stuff. We're going to talk about that in greater detail in a minute. But the timing of letters versus calling, I can't overstate how important it is to understand that you can get to the home just as fast by mail as you can by calling, because we all get the data about the same time. Most people don't call through all the expireds in a day, and the ones that do, they're not ultimately going to get a hold of all of them, and they don't even have access to all their phone numbers, which is a whole other story. Like I said, we'll talk about, but these things land quickly. When I send expireds out, sometimes it takes weeks to get calls from letters landing, right? So I'll get calls that come in weeks down the road, as much as 6 to 8 to 12 weeks down the road. But the majority of the phone calls are going to come in just the first week or less, okay? In fact, all of the hottest calls I get come within 1 to 2 days, and it's not uncommon for me to get a call the very next day. So literally, I've had agents that I work with. One of them's actually up in Northern California who recently told me this story about him, which is very much in line with my experience personally and many other agents across the country. But they go, well, I literally sent out the letter. I didn't call because the person had turned off their phone because they were getting so many calls. So I sent the letter out, and from the moment I stamped it, addressed it, put it in the mail, to the moment I actually had a signed and executed listing agreement was less than 24 hours. Okay, and this agent had only sent out 28 pieces at that point, so about $14 worth of mail ended up landing him a roughly $465,000 listing. And depending on what you charge, let's say give or take, like, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 worth of potential commission, right? So it's a pretty significant ROI when you start talking about a potential of 1,000% return on your investment, right? But he sent a letter and had a signed and executed listing agreement in less than 24 hours. The power of that is that the letter, remember you guys, the letter is doing something really important to us. See, when you call to set up an appointment. Let me put it this way. You call, get my marker out here. Let's do this one. You call to set appointments. Okay. Now, the letters are calling you. That kind of looks funny. Letters are calling me. Yes, the letters are calling me. And it's because the letter acts as something. The letter acts as this process here, right? This process right here in the in-between is called a filter. Okay? It's called a filter. And what's nice is the filter is I write the letter and it gets sent out, okay? The end action doesn't always happen. They're not always able to get appointments, not always able to get the inbound call, right? But this acts as a natural filter for me, and it's working. See, the calls can't make themselves, right? You can use an auto dialer, but there ultimately has to be somebody on the other end of that line to be able to talk to the seller to hopefully set an appointment. On the letters, I don't have to be over here like waiting to talk, right? Waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for them to literally open the mail. They'll call me if they want to talk, right? So the letter itself acts as a natural filter, and while people are going through it over the course of a couple days or weeks or months, then I ultimately can do other prospecting methods, send other letters out, target different places, right? Because the calls are dialed to set appointments. When the letters go out, these guys are calling me, and they're not calling me to set appointments. They're hotter leads. They're calling to either do a phone appointment or to set an appointment to actually come and talk and list the house, right? So this is like we're calling to try and build rapport and to try and build recognition and to try and build a relationship. The letter actually acts as a natural filter, and the tone that we take in this letter does build rapport. There's also a follow-up technique that some of you may, as part of my overall system, may have also invested in. And for those who did, we go deeper into a filtration process that surrounds this. But for those of you who are investing just in the letter portion, know that the letter absolutely can stand alone. It's boosted by the support structure that I have and the full system that does a little bit of follow-up and a little bit of additional rapport building in a fun and unique way. But guys, it's really important to understand that these letters are out there, and when they're sitting in the mailbox and people are looking through them, it's a natural filter. So when I get a call, I'm not getting a call to set an appointment to talk about what I can do. I'm getting a call where people are like, hey, let's come in, let's get the listing dialed in, right? Because I've built rapport with the letter. This filter helps me secure the listing, okay? So that's what's really, really important for you to understand, is that the letters work for you. So from a timing perspective, when you're setting appointments on the phone, when you're cold calling, generally an agent that cold calls is going to be setting time aside, right? They're going to be setting time aside and saying, hey, I'm going to take this amount of time each day and I'm going to cold call during this time and that time, and maybe switch it up so you try to get different people at different times and see which times work best and what days work best and figure it all out, right? What's nice is people got to check their mail. They may not check it every day. They may not check it at the same time every day. They may check the mail and not open it that day. They may check the mail and then open it like once a week. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it's a tangible piece. It requires higher levels of engagement and interaction, and they open that mail, and it's a different experience overall. Okay, it's better than cold calling. Cold calling is such a saturated market and such a saturated tactic rather. So it's important that you understand the power of direct mail. It's working for you while you're doing other things. People cold call and they cold call and they cold call, but when they turn off that dialer or they stop calling, well, the strategy stops working. But the letters are out there fishing and fishing and fishing, right? It's like having a hook in the water, right? When you're cold calling, you might be calling on 3 at a time, with a little bit of bait, a little worm at the end of each one, right? And hoping that you can get one of them, but it can only call so many people at a time. Maybe a voicemail drop or a blast text message, whatever way you like to harass people. But when you are doing a letter, what's cool is you just got lines everywhere in the water. They are all over the place at all different depths, and they are just out there fishing. There are just tons of them out there, hundreds of them, thousands of them if you want, depending on what letter, what campaigns. And what's cool is while these are fishing overnight for you, you can stop doing this, right? The cold calling, these 3 only work when they're active, right? This only works during the day. What's nice about the letters is I can't like shut the letters off at a certain time. People come home from work, they open their mail. People are up late at night, because they can't fall asleep. They open their mail, they get caught up on paperwork, they do whatever. So what's nice is all these lines here are fishing. They're fishing while somebody can't be cold calling. These lines are fishing while I'm showing properties to clients that I already have. It's just kind of a nice opportunity, a nice strategy, a nice technique. Let's talk about the power of a letter over a cold call. Okay, so you may have seen me do this exercise before. If you haven't, then pay attention. If you have, there we go, strangling myself on my microphone cord. If you haven't seen this, then you'll probably enjoy this little exercise. I'm going to take 100 homes. Okay, 100 homes. And they're expired, okay? These are expired listings, okay? And all 100 homes are expired. And we get to call on them in 2 different ways. We get to prospect on them in 2 different ways, okay? One agent gets to cold call, okay? And the other agent gets to send letters. So if this one over here is going to call, and this one over here is going to mail. Okay. Now, we're all contacting the same 100 homes. So you and I are going to contact, or agent 1 and agent 2 are going to contact the same 100 homes. We don't get more, we don't get less, and we're given all the same information. But this agent over here likes to call. So of the 100 homes, right? So each side has 100 homes. Okay? Of those 100 homes, and I've gotten this number from agents I've surveyed, I actually think based on my personal experience and my personal research and actually my cold calling times when I've done this before, I actually find lesser numbers than what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to be overzealously fair. I think of 100 homes, based on my research, about 40 to 50 of them have phone numbers, but some agents have told me they get as many as 75. So I'm going to use a high number for that. 75 have numbers. Okay? Of those 75, only about 25 are accurate. Okay? So we've got 100 homes, 75 of them have numbers. Of the 75, only 25 of those numbers are accurate. And of the 25, you'd be lucky if you can get 3 to 5 contacts, meaning that you actually get to talk to. Okay? You get to talk to 3 to 5. Now, don't worry. I've had the agents, and you might be one of them, that says, James, I don't care what it takes. Through hell or high water, I'm going to contact and be in touch and talk to all 25, even if it takes me 2 weeks of calling to actually get all 25, okay? If you call these same 100 homes, which really means you're calling 75 numbers, so you're blowing through a bunch that don't matter because they're not real, 25 are accurate. So let's say that you only got to talk to 3 to 5 a day. You'd have to do this for a minimum of 5 days, at best, a minimum of 5 days to be able to get through to all 25, assuming you can actually talk to 3 to 5 different people every single day. On the reverse side, let's take the same 100 homes, right? Each side started with 100 homes. So now the male side gets the same 100 homes, okay? Now, how many of those homes have addresses? Okay? All 100 of those houses have addresses. Now, of the 100 homes over here, only about 75 of them are going to have phone numbers, right? And then we said that 25 of those addresses or phone numbers are accurate. Well, how many of the addresses are accurate? You know what? Let's say that about 90 of them are accurate. Okay. If I actually had a return mail rate of 10%, that would be like ridiculously high, okay? But let's say that when you look them up, some of them haven't had updated addresses. Maybe some of them relocated already and you don't have the new mailing address. Maybe they didn't do mail forwarding. Maybe there's some way that you can't catch them, whatever. So we give a little bit of margin of error here, right? But 10% on this is it would be pretty high. But I'm trying to be overly fair to both sides. So you got 100 homes, 100 homes. They're the same 100 homes. 75 of them have phone numbers. All 100 of them have addresses. Only 25 of them are accurate, but on the phone numbers, but about 90 of them are accurate on the addresses. And of the 90 of them that are accurate, let's call it 90 of them. You know what? Let's say that some people throw their mail away, because I'll be extra fair here. Let's say that only 80 of them actually opened the darn thing. Okay? Which again would be a gross underestimation, because we have a significantly higher open rate than that, and I know that because of the success rate that we have with these. But let's just be overzealous and say that we don't get more than 80 people to open them. Guys, it's the same 100 homes. Now, not all of these people are talking to me directly, and all of the people that you're talking to over here on the cold call side, it doesn't mean that these conversations are valid or that they're worth anything. It just means that the conversation physically and actually realistically took place, right? Over here, it's the same kind of thing. Like, these 80 people actually opened and saw the letter. I was able to communicate with them by way of direct mail. Right? You tell me which of these strategies get you in front of more people. Now, a lot of folks who cold call specifically state that what they end up doing is getting a hold of everybody anyway, the same number of people, because they say, well, I call them for sure, but anybody I can't get a hold of, I definitely send mail to. Bullshit. No, they don't. That's just a blatant lie, and while some do, it is absolutely not the norm. Most people that cold call absolutely do not send a mail piece out, and when they do, their mail piece is about as valuable as the phone call. See, the problem is what a lot of people like to do, if you're in that mentality and you say, well, I call everybody and then I follow up with the ones by mail that don't answer their phone. Guys, this is simple. You got to reverse it. Your mail should be number 1 and your call should be number 2. So if you're going to do any kind of follow-up, what you should be doing is mailing first and then calling and asking if they got the letter. Then it takes you away from this like, hey, I was calling to see if you wanted to sell, and I know you're getting like 80 bajillion of these a day and blah, 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 blah. If you send the mail first and then I just say, hey, what's going on? It's James. Hey, I sent out a letter about a week ago or a few days ago, and I just want to make sure you got it. USPS, sometimes they fail me. Did you have any questions about it? And they go, what was the letter? I don't recognize your name. Oh, well, your home had come off the MLS, and I just wanted to see if you were interviewing agents to relist the home. No, go after yourself. Okay, whatever, fine. Right? We get off the phone. there's plenty of different, scripts that you can use. I try to keep it more conversational than that. So when I actually call people and they say, no, I didn't get it, I go, all right, well, listen, I don't have a script. I wasn't really calling you with a script in mind, and I don't really have anything, prepared other than just to follow up on my mail. But it was really just to see if you had any questions about the market, and to ultimately find out if you're going to relist your home and see what it takes to interview for that job. I don't have some canned language or questions I wanted to ask you. I just wanted to have kind of a human conversation with you, what's going on. And they still may mother F you off the phone, but the reality is now you have something different to call about because you've already sent something out. And I've actually sent pieces like this out, and then I'll go do an open house in a different neighborhood or whatever, and lo and behold, I'll get somebody that walks through, and I introduce myself, or they see my sign, and oh, hey, how you doing? Whereabouts are you from? You're familiar with the area, blah blah blah. And they go, James Hoff, huh? That's so funny. Did you recently send me a letter about my house that expired? And I'm like, I'll be damned, I probably did. Are you out in ABC neighborhood? They're like, yeah, I am. Okay. Well, yeah, that was probably me. I'm the only James Hoff that I know around here. So what's kind of cool is you get people that'll actually recognize it and talk to you about it, because the mail piece that you're sending out is totally different. But when I look at the delta between the two of these, there's no difference here, right? There's no difference here, so we can get rid of that. 75 versus 100. There's a 25 difference there. 25 versus 90. What is that? 65, right? 65 there. And what is this? 3 to 5, so let's call it 5. So 75 here. So there's a difference of 75 homes, 75 contacts that I'm able to get a hold of by mailing as opposed to calling. Okay? I'm able to get a hold of 75 more people at a minimum by mailing as opposed to calling. Now, let's talk about the difference in the conversations that happen. An outbound call requires you to have a list of questions, okay? You've got your script. You've got the stuff that you ultimately want to talk about, and you kind of go through the normal rundown, okay? When you get an inbound call, it's a different experience. There we go. If you haven't experienced an inbound call, well, I'm terribly sorry, and I hope that changes for you with this, because that's the point of these campaigns. Sorry, I'm trying to get this microphone in a good spot for you. There you go. My goodness, it's like an off day on the microphone. So what we want to do is I lost my train of thought. Stand by, it'll come back. Oh, when you make that outbound call, right, you've got to have your script. You've got to have all that stuff in place. When you have calls coming into you, it's a very different experience, because you have people that have voluntarily chosen to speak with you. So the conversation is not as aggressive. The conversation is not as, it doesn't have to feel or be scripted in any way, shape, or form. But the reason it doesn't have to be that way is because, again, they called you. You've already built enough rapport and trust, whatever it may be, to get them to want to pick up the phone and talk to you. So now it's your responsibility to be conversational. If you want to be successful as an agent that uses a direct mail campaign, when you get those inbound calls, it has to be very, very conversational. You have to be prepared to talk about the information and answer questions that they have. But instead of you having a bunch of questions, it's more likely that they're going to call and ask you questions instead, right? And they're gonna drive that conversation. You're gonna drive it by knowing where that conversation is gonna go and ultimately understand where it's gonna lead to, right? But they're gonna be calling you first and starting that conversation voluntarily, and that gives you a huge upper hand because they chose to reach out to you, right? They got away from that personal, they got away from that permanent filing cabinet of like throwing you away or turning off the phone. The other reason on that note that mail is so successful, oh, that's kind of a funny way to do a U. People shut phones. Guys, people shut off their phones. Yes, you can stop your mail. My goodness, I guess you could stop your mail too if we're being, technically perfectly correct. But the fact of the matter is that people shut off their phones. The way that you can get beyond that is by making sure that you have something in the mail. The mail is going to be a better, more, it's a better received, tangible piece, more human interaction, more engagement required to do it. People can ignore your phone call or hang up on you with one finger. But in order to open an envelope, it requires two hands or at least all five fingers, right? Unless you don't have five fingers and two hands, then whatever you got is what it takes you to use, but it requires a lot more engagement and interaction, and that's what's super important, you guys, is people can turn their phones off. Most people, when they have their home expire on the MLS, are not calling the post office and saying, hey, put a stop on my mail for 3 weeks. No, but they will turn their phone off during the day. And they might turn their phone off during the day anyway, because most people will have jobs. So these are all things that you need to be thinking about and keeping in mind. Okay, now we talked about calling after the letter if instead of calling before. Let's talk about the one and done strategy. So the messaging typically is that you need to be in contact about 12 to 15 times before you can expect engagement from whoever you're prospecting on, right? Excuse me a moment. Let me try doing this one other way. It's driving me crazy. Gonna have the most inconsistent audio on this recording ever. There we go. See if that works better. So what a lot of people think is that you have to spend all this time, money, and energy in doing over and over and over and over and over again contacts and communication. I actually don't believe in that. And the reason is because I'm a believer that if you add enough, if you add enough value, if you show what your solution is, if you build enough rapport on the front end, okay, if you build enough rapport on the front end, then there's no reason for you to have to continue following up, because again, the value and solution driven lead generation and the rapport building that takes place all act as what? It acts as a natural filter. Okay, look at it this way. If you were trying to pick up on somebody at a bar, okay, and you went up to them and you were like, hey, can I buy you a drink? And they're like, no, I'm good, thanks. Would you go back up to that person 11 more times and be like, hey, really, I'd love to buy you a drink. Are you sure I can't buy you a drink? What about now? Is now good? How about I hit you up in about 15 minutes? How's a drink now? All right, I'll catch you tomorrow and I'll ask you then. Then you see that person at the bar again and again and again, and you keep asking them if you can buy them a drink. At some point, they're gonna put a fist in your face, okay? Sometimes what we can do is show our value and solution on the front end and build some rapport with them, with our messaging, with our tone, by the way that we choose to stand out. In this case, with our expired letter, by showing them that we know the scripts that agents are using, right? So we know what agents are doing, and we show that, right? And then we tell them, I'm more personal than that. I'm more personable than that. I'm a human being, and I'd like to talk to you like a human being. If you want to talk to somebody who doesn't use a script, please see my contact info below. That creates a natural filter for us. I don't know about you, but I only want to talk to people who want to talk to me. So my suggestion to you is to understand that it's important to follow up, but less follow-up is required if you build enough rapport on the front end. Less follow-up is required if you show enough value on the front end. Less follow-up is required if you build a human connection on the front end. So one and done is how I did letters for 5 years before I even tried implementing additional systems and behind the scenes strategies. Now, for those of you that invested in the full system with the extra pillars to support this entire strategy, and it's like a multiple angle kind of deal, there's some additional follow-up in there. There's what I call a safety net strategy built in there, which also helps you build rapport in a unique way. Okay, so that's available to those of you that chose to invest in it. But I want you to confidently know that for 5 years, I built rapport by showing my value, presenting my solutions, and having a natural filter with my human approach, my human element, that personable nature that I approached this lead generation with. And the one and done touch stands perfectly fine for me. Think about this also. If I go after somebody 12 times, that's 11 other people that I didn't go after one time. And I don't know about you, but I would rather spread it out, right? Now, let's say that you want to do a follow-up campaign. Look, that's fine. Your follow-up campaign could be one of two things. I guess it could be one of 3 or 5 or a billion different things, but here's my suggestion. If you're going to do a follow-up campaign to this, I would recommend, number one, that you just send the exact same letter out again. Okay? That's one option. Just send the exact same letter out again. The second option would be to send a slightly different letter and say, hey, I don't know if you got my first letter, but here's basically what it said, and carry the same tone. Now, I'm a big fan of the one and done, and if you want a more deliberate follow-up strategy, I have that. Again, some of you already chose to invest in that. If you didn't, there should be a way that you could pick that up on this page, so just hover over that part of the lesson and you can, or that part of the course, and you can probably get directed to a page to pick that up independently. But having the extra stuff, you guys, I mean, it's like it's not necessary for you to pepper the same people over and over and over and over and over again. My follow-up is very simple. I never touch the same lead or the same prospect more than 3 times on one campaign. And more often than not, it's a one and done or a two and done strategy. Okay? And the reason it's a two and done is because there's that safety net thing that works for me behind the scenes that builds rapport, and I talk about that in my other lesson. But guys, if you show enough value and solution on the front end, it naturally filters people out. You only want to talk to people who want to talk to you. I don't need to go to the bar and beg somebody to talk to me. I don't need to go to the bar and beg somebody to let me buy them a drink. They either say yes or they say no. And I'm okay with how the chips fall, and then I move on to the next opportunity. Every yes that you hear is an opportunity. Every no that you hear is an opportunity for you to go hear a yes somewhere else. Every yes is an opportunity, obviously, to make some dough. But hearing no is perfectly fine, and it's clarity, because no is a bit of a filter, and it doesn't mean never. It just means not now, and you can create follow-up later on it. But why force the square peg into the round hole? Guys, there's so many opportunities out there that what we end up doing, let me illustrate this a little differently. What we oftentimes end up doing is we put ourselves in a position where we say that this is our, I'll use a different color. Let's say that this is our little field that we're going after, right? This is the group. Maybe this is our group of 100. And we're just going to pepper this 100, right, times 10. We're going to just hit them 10 times no matter what. But what if you could hit 1,000? What if you could hit 1,000 homes times 1? I would rather spread myself out and hit 1,000 homes once and have an opportunity for 900 more people, right? It doesn't get me more people to see my message because I hit 100 homes 10 times. I mean, yeah, maybe if only 80 of them saw it, then maybe the other 20 will get it later. I don't know. But out of 1,000, out of 100, I can never have more than 100 people see my stuff. Out of 1,000, I guarantee you more than 100 people are going to see it. So if I have the opportunity, what I would rather do is hit more people one time with a very specific message. Remember, this is not geo farming. We are not geographically farming. In a geo farm, that follow-up becomes really, really important. apologize, I have an itch. That follow-up becomes really, really important because it's a branding play. It's a long-term branding play when you geo-farm to see your name and your face and the activity over and over and over and over and over again. But when you do very specific direct mail targeting, remember, this isn't like a bulk. This isn't like a bulk, like an EDDM route where we just hit the same group of people over and over and over again. No, this isn't like the bomb where we come over and we blast an area and we hope that we have, a kill in there somewhere. No, what we're doing instead is we're using that. We're not like throwing the grenade, right? We're using the sniper rifle and we're picking our targets very, very specifically, and we're going after them one at a time, okay? And they're very hand-selected targets, so we don't need to hit them over and 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 over again. And here's the cool part. Remember, if the calls only have 25 numbers that are accurate, okay, let's just say in this example that they can hit all 25 and it's good. If the male can hit 80, remember we talked about 80 instead, that's a difference of 55. That means that there's 55, and this is a generous number, and I'm being hard on this one, right? Like I said, this could be 90. Let's see, 80 minus 25 is 55, yeah. So this one over here has plus 55 homes to target that are not getting phone calls. These aren't getting phone calls anyway. So these 55 homes, there's some crossover here, but these 55 homes, the difference between them, the 55 homes that they don't even have phone numbers for, they're very likely not even targeting, which makes this a less crowded space. So the importance of our messaging and the tone that we have in our letters becomes that much more important because these 55 homes are now reachable. And the only way, and the majority of the way that people are getting them, if they're not door knocking, which most of them will not be door knocked, is they're going to be hit by mail. But most of the mail they're receiving is going to be condescending. It's going to put down the competition and say, your current listing agent probably didn't know how to market your home, right? We're not doing that. We're saying, hey, I just wanted to give you some insight. Here's the script that most of my competition will be using so that you can be prepared for it, right? We're not saying that the agents suck. We're not saying that the marketing's terrible. We're not saying that I'm a gift from God and all that kind of stuff. No. And if you don't like the rough around the edges approach, you can soften the tone in there a little bit. That's perfectly fine. But the point is, the extra 55 homes that are going to be unreachable by phone because we don't have numbers for them are reachable by mail, and mail gives us an opportunity to stand apart. Is this making sense? Do you get it? I can hear the yeses, even though I hear the yeses through the energy I get back from you guys when you're watching this stuff and when you're consuming it and feeling it. If this doesn't make sense, if there's something you have a question about, then feel free to reach out and hit me up. I'm here to help you. I just want you to understand that we're living in a world, you guys, that's different. Whether we like to acknowledge it or not, the world is not the way that it used to be. The world is not as receptive as it used to be to cold calling and door knocking. Now, do I teach cold calling and door knocking? Absolutely. Have I done them before? Absolutely. Are they still successful strategies? 100%. There's two problems with them. Number one, a lot of people in this industry really suck at it. Okay, they suck at cold calling and door knocking, and it's become their excuse to not be successful. I hope it hasn't become yours. And if it was your excuse, then congratulations for being here because you've chosen to let that go. But the second thing that's wrong with it is not that the agent sucks. It's that the consumer doesn't receive it well. It's just everywhere. Okay? The information, the lack of privacy, our data and information is everywhere. And it's exploited in such a negative way. And it's abused. It's just absolutely abused. So agents are over calling, they're over knocking. People are getting 30, 40, 50 calls right after their home expires. even if they got the same number of letters, isn't it nice that at least they can just dump them in the trash? But the approach that you're taking with the hand addressed, reaching out to homes that they don't have the phone numbers that they do have, these guys might be shutting their phones off, right? Because they're getting so bombarded with stuff. Let's lift the industry back up again and find a more tactful approach, right? And then eventually when people stop cold calling as much as they do and they're using different scripts, well then I guess I'll have to redo the letter and get you into something else. But the point is guys, the direct mail, even the millennials have indicated that they take direct mail more seriously than digital advertising, and I can guarantee you that it is absolutely better received than cold calls now, or door knocking. And some people go, well, it's a face-to-face business. And James, you know what? I don't really care what you have to say because it works. It's a proven strategy. Listen, I've done tens of millions of dollars worth of deals off of cold calling and door knocking. I haven't cold called or door knocked in years. And the reason is because I don't need to, because I spend my time talking to people who want to talk to me. I reach more people on one-touch campaigns that are high value, high impact right off the get-go, right? And they either call me or they don't. And if they don't, I'm not losing sleep over it because I'm off to the next one, right? I'm off to the next prospect. I have all these phishing all the time and I just get calls that are coming in regularly. The inbound call is worth more than any outbound call that you could possibly make. The one inbound phone call is worth all 100 outbound calls that you're going to make to try and get those letters and then some. So one thing that you can expect with direct mail and with the expired strategy, especially because this is a very, 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 very crowded space. It's one of the most crowded lead types that we're prospecting on in real estate. So just know that's the fight you're in. One of the things that you have to know about this is that you will get less contacts inbound than you will on a traditional social media ad, or you may not get in contact with as many people, meaning you may not talk to physically with words out of your mouth as many people than if you cold call. But the conversations that you do have are with on fire leads. They are the hottest leads ever. And remember, they chose to call you. I would rather not spend my time begging to buy that drink for that gal at the end of the bar and spend my time focused on just the people that want to talk to me, because while these are out fishing, I can show houses to the people that did call me. I can be listing the houses of the people that did call me. I can be doing other things for you fine folks out there, right? While all of this is happening, while all these are fishing. And then I'm on to the next campaign. Now, do I put all my eggs in one basket and only do mail? No, I do open houses, I do social media, but those three activities are the big three that I do to generate 80 to 90% of my leads, okay? So that's where I spend the majority of my time. I don't spread myself thin with 10, 20, 30 different types of lead generation. No, I have 3, sometimes 4 different types of lead generation opportunity, but I pick the 3 right now that I am absolutely, without question, most excited about and passionate about. We just don't live in a world that's as receptive to cold calling, so I've listened to what the consumer has to say. I respect how I feel. I've listened to my own voice, and I don't think that just because I put my realtor cap on, all of a sudden I'm God's gift to the world, and that my cold calls are different and better, and me knocking on the door will be received differently and better, right? Because I'm just the same to the consumer as every other solicitation call that they get. To the consumer, I'm nothing special. It's just another phone call that's annoying. It's just another door knock that makes somebody feel defensive, right? I don't like it when people uninvited knock on my door, and nowadays it actually is just damn dangerous. You got to be careful about that, right? But when I send mail out, I think to myself, yeah, I'll bite. I don't mind looking at something in the mail. That's fine. But the call, man, I get really annoyed. I got like 6 calls just today. The day that I'm recording this, I got like 6 calls just today to try to sell me stuff for real estate. Okay. And then a couple things personal, right? So about 6 to 10 calls in a day where people are trying to sell me stuff. I don't want to be the next guy calling those poor people. Oh, it's just awful. So enjoy this opportunity, enjoy the strategy. I'm going to leave this video at that.